So hopefully you've already seen my other video about what SOTAmat can do. In this video, let's talk about how to get started. First, go to the SOTAmat, SOTAmat.com website, and we'll create a new account. From the SOTAmat homepage, we're going to go to the upper left corner and click on the Register button. Now for your username, it must be your call sign. Nothing else is going to work. It has to be your valid call sign. Fill in the rest of the information and click the Register button. Now that you've registered, you're taken to your profile page. Now this is an optional step for those who want to use SOTAmat's two-way commands and not just self-spotting over HF. Click on the gear icon and then Edit Profile. Here you can enter in one or a comma-separated list of phone numbers that will automatically log you in when you send commands from those phones. You can also define a PIN code to be used to log you in with things like email or a Garmin inReach. So SOTAmat works when you send your call sign with up to a 4-character suffix, and skimmers, monitoring stations, pick up your suffix and report them to PSK Reporter, which sends them to SOTAmat. SOTAmat decodes that suffix and then executes a command. That's how it works. Now, obviously, we can't encode every frequency, every SOTA summit, and every POTA park that would be possible for you to activate all into a 4-character suffix. So what you do is you predefine a configuration of just the SOTA regions or the POTA locations where you plan to operate. You don't need to specify specific summits, just the regions that contain your summits and just the POTA locations that contain the parks that you might want to activate, let's say in the coming year. Okay, now go to the top of the page. All the way to the right is the Preparation menu. Click on Preparation, and it gives you all of the instructions of the steps required to define a configuration. Now, I participate in the SOTA program, so I'm going to start on the SOTA regions page. And then in the drop-down, I'm going to select the regions that are near my home. So the San Francisco Bay Area regions and the Lake Tahoe regions, where I like to do a lot of hiking. And so I'm going to add every single one of the 5 or 6 regions that are around my home and put them in, and then I will later be able to select any summit that's within any of those regions when I'm in the field using the mobile app. You'll notice there's 2 optional fields. One is My Notes. The application completely ignores it. It's only for your benefit, and those notes will be shown to you in the mobile app. It's just for you. The other optional parameter is that you can have a post as. That's if you want a special call sign. For example, in some countries, depending on what region of a country you're operating from, your call sign that you want to post your spot as will change. In some areas, you might need to use a suffix like /p for portable when operating in the SOTA program. You can normally leave that blank, that post as field, and it will simply post as your call sign, which is your SOTAmat username you did in the first step. If it's not blank, your spots will be posted with the call sign that you specify here. Again, this is optional, and for most people, you won't fill anything in for that field. Now, after I finish putting in all of the regions around my home, I'm going to go back and make an edit. So I click on one of the rows after I'm done here, and I'm going to put a post as with my call sign and /p so that when I'm operating from that region, my spots will be posted with /p. Next, I scroll to the bottom of the page, and if I refresh the page, reload the page, you can see it will compute the total number of summits that are in all of the regions that I've selected in my configuration. Okay, now if you participate in the POTA program, you're going to go up to the top menu there and select POTA locations. And we're going to do a similar process for POTA where we type in the locations. So for example, I'm selecting the state of California and I'm selecting US Nevada, the 2 states that contain the parks that I'm most likely to activate in the next year. Again, the notes are optional, and again, you can leave the post as blank, the default, or you can specify a version of your call sign with prefixes or suffixes if you want to post your call sign in a special way. And if we refresh the page, we can see now the total number of parks that are in the locations that we've configured. Now go back up to the top menu and select Frequencies and Modes. When you're in the field, you're going to select either a SOTA summit or a POTA park, and you're also going to have to select a predefined mode like FM, CW, or single sideband, and a predefined frequency. Now we define our frequencies and modes by selecting a base frequency, such as the edge of the 20-meter band for single sideband, and then to that base frequency, we define a step size that channelizes the band, let's say 1 kilohertz steps, and then we have the number of steps that we want to be able to select. So for me, I selected 20 meters, a step size of 1 kilohertz, measured as 1,000 hertz, and then also 120 steps. Now, you have to make sure that your total combinations of these frequency steps multiplied by the total number of POTA parks and SOTA summits doesn't exceed 1 million, because we're encoding all of this information into the 4-character suffix that's going to be transmitted to PSK Reporter. That's why we're limited here to predefining just the amount of frequencies and just the summits and parks that we need, and not much more. But it's still pretty flexible. You can encode a lot of different combinations into those 1 million suffixes that you have available. And so look at how I've defined my bands and my modes that I want to operate on. So once again, we'll refresh the page and look at the total combinations at the bottom there. You can see it's turned green because we are under 1 million combinations. Perfect. I want you to notice there's 2 special lines here. First is the one that has a mode of testing. When you're in the field on the app, you can select that testing mode frequency, and when you self-spot with that, either with POTA or with SOTA, it will put a comment in the field on SOTA Watch or POTA app letting everyone know that you're not actually activating and that you're testing. So that's great for practicing at home. It will send out the alerts to everyone. You'll see them in the POTA system and the SOTA Watch system, but at least you can let people know not to try and make a contact with you. The other special line that you see there is alert-CW, and that is specifically for SOTA operators using Morse code who want to be able to tickle RBN hole when in the field. Unlike normal RBN hole, where you have to pre-register an alert and know when you're going to be on the summit and which summit you're going to be on ahead of time when you had internet access. With SOTAMate, you can send and post the alert through SOTAMate, select whichever summit you happen to be on when you're actually on it at that time, and then it will post that alert to SOTA Watch so that RBN hole can find it. Notice the My Notes column. Normally, the My Notes column is ignored by SOTAMate and is only used for your own purpose to show you your own notes in the app. But when you're doing an alert CW, the My Notes column is special. It will post those notes with the alert, and that can be a command to the RBN hole service. So here you see me saying S+12, and that says that when I post this alert, I want the RBN hole system to continue to track me on that summit for the next 12 hours. For the next step, go back up to the top menu and select Messaging Commands. This is a table where you can predefine a set of messages, either email messages or SMS messages, that you can tell SOTAMate to send on your behalf, for example, to a friend or a spouse. This might tell them that you've arrived on summit, or that you're packing up, or that there's a problem, or that you might be late. Any message you want. And currently, SOTAMate only supports 2 message formats, either SMS, and that only works in certain countries. SMS costs me money, and some countries are 1,000% more expensive than other countries, so not every country supports SMS, and it's not always clear which countries do or don't, so you might have to run a test. The other thing is your phone number for SMS has to be in a pretty rigid format. You have to start with the plus symbol, then your country code, and then the phone number. And you can only list one number. That goes into the target field. Alternatively, and this works worldwide, you can send an email message. So you would select the command as email. The target would be the email address that you want the message sent to, and it cannot be a list. It has to be a single email. And then you can put in your payload, the actual message that you want sent. And so you can see in my text here, I'm telling the person, let's say my spouse who I'm sending the message to, I'm telling them that this is a one-way message, that I am not able to compose it in the field. I can only select a predefined message. So it's somewhat limited. It's not like having a satellite communicator, but it's better than nothing if that's all you have. And once again, I'm going to refresh the page, go to the bottom, and make sure that my total combinations value is green. Now to review, let's go back up to the top menu and click on HF Preparation. Scroll down to the very bottom, and it gives you a summary of all of the regions, all of the POTA locations, the number of parks for each, and also all of your modes and frequencies. And again, you can see your total combinations. So that preparation page gives you a summary of your entire configuration. For most people, we're done with the website, and now we move to the mobile app. And that means if you're on iOS, go to the Apple App Store and look for SOTAmat, or if you are on Android, go to the Android Play Store and install SOTAmat. We'll see you there. All right, so we're in the App Store here, looked up SOTAmat. We're going to download it, install it, and then we will launch it. Okay, the first thing is, since it's the first time in, we don't have a configuration loaded. We're going to skip that step 1 at the top because we already did that on our desktop computer. Step 1 was defining our configuration. So here in step 2, we put in our call sign, which is our username that we registered as on the website, and we type in our password and then say load configuration. Now if you look down at the bottom of the screen there, you can see all sorts of statistics about the configuration we loaded. In step 3 here, this is an optional step. I clicked that download button, and we're downloading the entire database of all of the SOTA summits worldwide and all of the POTA parks worldwide, plus a bunch of statistics as to who last activated each one and how many points they are and so on. So we have all that information even when we're offline in the back country and have no internet access. Now let's imagine you're about to go on a trip and you forgot to add a SOTA region or a frequency you want to use or a POTA park, POTA location. You can do everything we did on the website on the mobile phone. So here I went to that step 1, which just takes us to the website. And then the upper left-hand corner, there's a little plus sign there, and that's how you log in. It's a little hidden in the upper left there. So you log in, you can see your configuration, you can change it in the field, and then you can reload that configuration into the phone when you still have internet access. Now on some Android devices, there's a bug in the OS such that the load configuration button gives an error and doesn't work. If you look here down at the experts only section at the bottom, there's a place where we can insert some text, and that is where we're going to use the workaround. So if you have the Android bug and the normal method doesn't work, then you're going to launch a web browser, go to the SOTAmat.com web page. In the upper left corner, click the plus sign so that you can log in, put in your call sign and your password, log in, and then you're going to type in this mysterious special URL, a hidden web page, which is SOTAmat.com/configuration, and then load that page. And you should only go to this page if you have the Android bug, because it can cause problems, timestamp problems, if you don't have the bug. So you go to the page, click on the copy to clipboard, and that will take a bunch of blob of text and put it on the clipboard. You then go back into SOTAmat, down to that experts area, and paste in that blob of text. That's all of your configuration encoded and compressed into that big blob of text. And now you can see SOTAmat has loaded your configuration manually instead of doing it through your username, your call sign, and your password. All right, the first thing we're going to do is let's find an open frequency. 239 looks good. So we're going to come into SOTAmat. We've loaded our configuration by logging in. We're going to do a SOTA spot. So we're going to go to our regions. These are the regions that we predefined on the website. So let's do Whiskey 6 November Charlie. Let's pick one of the most famous peaks, 423, which has been activated 548 times, Mount Davidson in San Francisco. And then after we've selected our summit, we're going to select our band. I'm going to use the testing mode on 20 meters because we don't actually want a spot. I'm not at that location, so we're going to pretend that I'm there and send a testing spot to SOTAmat. And now we're going to look at our frequency that's open, 239, 14239, there it is. And we've selected that, and it's computed in the green text there. That is the FT8 message that's going to be sent. And then we're going to play the audio. So before we spot ourselves, now I'm going to use the AB switch. I've already programmed in the FT8 frequency, which, generally I would start with 20 meters, even if I was going to be making my contacts on some other band or some other frequency. Let's say I was going to do single sideband on 40 meters, I would still do my initial spot with FT8 on 20 meters because there's more skimmers that are monitoring that frequency. So here we are. You can see I can quickly A-B between the frequency I'm going to operate on, the 239 that we selected, and the FT8 frequency that we're going to send our SOTAmat spotting message to. Okay, so we can switch back and forth. I'm going to turn the volume up, and I'm first going to test the clock on my phone and make sure that if I'm off grid and I don't have internet access, like right now I do have internet access. Heck, we can go into airplane mode and turn all that off. And turn off all of that. Now it's pretending like we're off grid, and what we want to do now is make sure that the phone's clock, which is often set by the internet, is synchronized to the atomic clock that all the other FT8 stations are synchronized to. Now, if we're in the backcountry and we haven't had internet access for a long time, our iPhone clock might drift. So what we can do to get it synchronized is we can listen to all the other stations that are out there, and they're synchronized to the atomic clock, and we can compare my audio. So here we go. We're going to hit play. I'm going to turn the volume all the way up on the side. We got to wait 6 seconds, it says, before it gets to the next sequence. Now let's turn my volume all the way up. All right, so what we could hear right there was that my phone's audio is about within 1 second of all of the other audio from the other stations. Now you can hear not all the other stations are synchronized themselves, so you want to hear where the majority of the stations are coming in. Now if our clock was way off, what we would do is we go into the setup tab down at the bottom here, and you can see there's this time correction offset. So let's put it back, let's say minus 3 seconds on mine, and let's go back and try that again. Now what you could hear from that is that my audio started too early. It was 3 seconds early, and if we counted it in our head, 1, 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000, we know that we're way off. So if we kind of counted in our head that we're off by 3 seconds, let's come to the setup tab and take away 3 seconds of offset, and then we try it again. Okay, and we can either add up to 7.5 seconds or subtract 7.5 seconds, because FT8 is a 15-second window, so the most you can be off is 7.5 seconds in either direction. All right, let's try it again. I'm going to turn the other stations low. Okay, great. So we could hear that our clock is synchronized. Now, of course, I was on the internet just seconds ago, so of course my clock is synchronized. But if you were in the backcountry, it might not be. Anyway, we've synchronized our clock now. And generally you don't have to do that. I find on an iPhone, my clock stays synchronized for days. I know people with Android phones, their clocks tend to drift a lot faster than iPhones for some reason. But at least on an iPhone, you really don't have to mess with this very often, if at all. I've never really had to mess with it. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is set our levels. Again, this is something you only do once. You want to set your mic gain. So I usually keep my mic gain around 30 or so, and that's because the headset that I use when I'm actually making my contacts, this headset is at the right level at about 30. So what I want to do is get my phone audio output to be the same. So I set my system volume on the side here at maximum, and I'm going to change the SOTAmat volume relative to that maximum volume. Okay, so what we want to do is get the speaker from the phone right next to the microphone of the radio, and we want to get our ALC so that we approach getting ALC to turn on without turning it on, meaning we're getting maximum audio gain in without overloading the radio. And you know you're overloading when you start to see ALC come in. Now on an Elecraft radio, 0 ALC is when you have 4 bars. Okay, so we're shooting for not 5, that means we're over driving, and not less than 4, because then we're under driving and not getting the full power out. So that's what we're shooting for here. So now I'm going to put my radio power output, instead of at the 10 watts, I'm going to put it at 0 watts so we don't actually transmit. This is kind of like having a dummy load. So I'm going to take the watts down to 0. Okay, and now we're going to turn on the transmit button, and we're not actually transmitting, we're just pretending to. And I'm going to play with, my audio levels here. We got 3 seconds before it goes. Okay, so now you can see I can change the volume level, and I can change the distance that the phone is from the microphone, and I'm going to get it right to about 4 bars. There, so that seems, my phone seems like when I have 33% volume, and then I just kind of move the phone closer and farther away to get 5 bars. Or 4 bars, not 5 bars. Okay, so that's how we do that. So we've got our level set right. I'm going to stop transmitting, because remember we were at 0 watts, dummy load. Now I'm going to actually turn my wattage back on. So now that I've, basically what I've done is I've calibrated my speaker output level, and the gain, the microphone gain, I want it to be the same as when I use my headset here. And again, if I look at my mic gain, it's at about 30, which is what I do with my headset. Yours might be different for a different headset, but you're trying to get that 4 bars of ALC, and you're changing the audio volume. And the advantage of this is you're trying to make it as loud as you can get, so that the phone's speaker, as far as that microphone is concerned, is much louder than the birds and the wind and everything around me. So I'm increasing the signal to noise ratio, but by making the speaker as loud as I can without overdriving the radio. Okay, so now let's increase our power output, because we're actually going to transmit our FT8 message now. And I'm going to put it up at this radio with internal battery, goes up to 10 watts. And there we are at 10 watts. Okay, and well, I think we're ready to go. So we've selected Mount Davidson. You can see who the last activator was, K6EL, and he activated it just a few days ago, last week, 7 days ago. So here we are. We're going to go send our test spot message. And hit transmit. Whoops. Oh, let me do that again. So now what I'm going to do is bring up the volume so I can hear when the other stations are there. I'm going to hit transmit. I've got 6 seconds left, and then I'm going to hit, when the other stations go away, I'm going to hit transmit. And then I turned off transmit. And I just did it with a manual push to talk button there. I didn't use Vox. I didn't use anything fancy. You can hear when the other stations are pausing for the next sequence. That's when you hit transmit, or you can just read on the screen when it's about to transmit and hit the transmit button about 1 second before. And then we transmitted 4 times, and the reason for that, and each time it changes the audio frequency by 51 hertz. What it's doing is it's sending the same exact message 4 times for redundancy to make sure that we get heard. There might be QSB, there might be interference, there might be another station on the audio frequency that we selected. So it transmits once, it increases the audio frequency by 51 hertz, and then does it again, and it keeps doing that up to 4 times. And that way, hopefully, we can get around any QSB, interference, what have you. I found that if you transmit 4 times on 20 meters, you're really likely to get heard. Now, let's say you don't get heard. Let's say 20 meters is just terrible today. You can try any other FT8 frequency. When I shot the original video in the field, I made a mistake. When you're going to 40 meters or 7 megahertz, by default, the radio will select lower sideband for the single sideband mode, which is for voice is the correct sideband by convention. So 20 meters and up would normally be upper sideband for voice, and 40 meters and below would be lower sideband for voice. But we're not sending voice when talking to SOTAMate, we're doing data. We're using FT8. And by convention, most data modes require upper sideband no matter what band you're transmitting on, which is different from voice. We're not using the radio's data mode. That would require physical cables to connect the cell phone to the radio. Data mode doesn't allow you to bring audio in through the microphone of the radio. So instead, we're using the normal sideband as if we're a voice conversation. But for FT8, we need to get, if we're on 40 meters, 7 megahertz, we need to get into upper sideband mode, which isn't the default, and we need a way to override that. On a KX3 radio, you'd simply hold down, I think it is the mode button for 2 seconds or something like that, and it will swap on that band between lower sideband and upper sideband, between the default and the alternate. On this radio, the KX2, we don't have enough buttons to have dedicated modes like that. So the way you do it on this radio is you hold down the menu button to get into the menus, and you hear all your menus. And we're going to select in the alphabetized menu list alternate mode. And right now the alternate mode is the normal mode, meaning lower sideband on 40 meters. But we're going to flip the big dial there and say we want the alternate mode, and then exit the menu. And now you can see when we go to this FT8 frequency, we're going to transmit an upper sideband mode. Okay, so now we could transmit our SOTAMate signal over FT8 the 4 times, make sure it gets out, and then we'd go back into the menu and select normal, and then exit, and we can maybe switch bands and go to some other band that we're going to communicate on and make our contacts on, but we could have sent that FT8 message on 40 meters. Because of all this extra work, you can see why I always just start with 20 meters. 20 meters, you don't have to change these settings, 20 meters and above. And you have a lot of skimmers, monitoring stations, listening for your signal, a lot of computers that are listening to 20 meters. There are a number of stations that listen to 20, 40 meters, 15 meters, and 10 meters. So of all of those 10, 15, 20, and 40, it's only the 40 meter band where you have this upper sideband issue to worry about. The other ones will just default the right way and it works out of the box. But I just wanted to give you that extra instruction for those who are having trouble spotting on the 20 meters, which is where I would start. If you really need to get your signal through and you're having trouble on 20, this is the way to get your signal through on 40 meters. Again, the place where you spot SOTAMate doesn't need to be the same band as your operating band. When you send your SOTAMate signal, you're selecting your operating spot band where you're going to spot yourself, and that doesn't have anything to do with the band or frequency that your FT8 message went out on. All you're trying to do is get a computer to hear your message and execute your command, and the command is what says where you're going to be operating. When we sent our SOTAMate message, it went at the speed of light to the FT8 skimmers, the monitoring stations. But those stations cache the reception reports for up to 5 minutes before they send it on to PSK Reporter, which then sends it to SOTAMate, which then forwards it on to either the POTA app or the SOTAWatch app. And then other users out there are polling those apps, usually at once a minute. What that means is it can take up to 6 minutes for our message to be received by other users. But because multiple stations probably heard our FT8 signal, and because those caching clocks are not synchronized, on average you find it takes around 3 minutes after you transmit for your message to get through and be executed. And so here we can see that our command from SOTAMate was executed and received by the SOTAWatch website, where we can see our test message was received for Mount Davidson. All right, so let's say we made some contacts and we want to tell our spouse or our friends that we want to send them a message and let them know that we're ending our day. So I can come in, I've got these predefined messages, everything's okay, made it to the next summit. Whoop, there's our spot from before. I told you it takes about 2.5 minutes. And let's just send an everything okay message. You can make as many of these predefined messages as you want, and you can say who to send them to. So I'm sending it to my spouse there, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go to my FT8 frequency, and we're going to get ready to hit the play button and get ready to hit the transmit button. Now, normally I'd send that 4 times or so to make sure that the message gets through to a skimmer, but I know this one will get through because I'm pretty close to a skimmer. And if we wait another 2.5 minutes to 6 minutes for the network delay, if we go to that email, we'll see that come up. And sure enough, in about 2 minutes, we got an email message, and it's the same message that we predefined in our configuration. And the to address is the predefined target that we had, and you can see that it comes from a no reply address. So we can do the same thing with SMS messages and send a text message if you happen to be in the right countries where SMS is supported. Not every country supports it due to differing costs worldwide, but email works internationally. Now, shifting gears, let's talk about a different feature of SOTAMate. Not only can you post a spot for SOTA or post a spot for POTA, you can also, for SOTA, post what's called an alert CW. And this is meant for CW Morse code operators who want to use RBN hold. Now, you can Google what RBN hold is, but in essence, it's for CW operators, it does many of the same self-spotting things that SOTAMate does. The neat thing is that it's automatic. When the skimmers see your call sign and you change frequencies, RBN Hole will automatically follow you from frequency to frequency and respot you automatically. You can't really do that with SOTAMate because it depends on FT8, whereas RBN Hole is just decoding your CW messages. The problem with RBN Hole is that for it to work with SOTA, there has to be an alert that was pre-registered when you had internet access before your trip. You had to know which peak you were going to be on, and you had to know what time you were going to arrive there so that RBN Hole knows how to spot you. It needs to know when to start listening for your call sign in CW on the skimmers, and it needs to know where to spot you, which summit to spot you on. And oftentimes when you're in the backcountry on a multi-day trip, you don't know which summit you're going to be on and when. And this is where SOTAMate can allow you to post an alert on SOTAWatch such that RBN Hole can then pick it up and then follow your CW operations as you change frequency to frequency. So if you do it that way, you only have to post the SOTAMate alert once, and then RBN Hole for the rest of the day can track you on that summit even though you're changing frequencies. So that's a pretty cool way to use both of these systems together. After you've done your activation in the field and you get home, it can be interesting to see some statistics about how SOTAmat worked. To do that, go to the SOTAmat.com website, go to the HF Activity menu, select that, scroll down, and you'll see two sections. One section are reports about your own signals, your call sign, and that's filtered. And then below is another table showing all messages received from all call signs of people using SOTAmat. And you can click on the links to see the various POTA parks or SOTA peaks that people were activating and who's been sending them. You can get information on these people. So if we want to see who this is, we've got Robert Burton, or, oh, here's someone famous. Somebody on the SOTA management team is Josh Gibbs. All right. Now, if you come up to the top here, where these are a filtered view of what's below, you get some additional columns telling you more information about your own signals and reception reports. So you can see duplicate means that multiple stations received that same message from me. And you could see where they're located in the U.S. So some of these are on the East Coast while I'm on the West Coast. In fact, we have somebody who's in Alaska. If I click on the call sign of who received my message, it'll take me to QRZ, and I could see this person received me from the San Francisco area all the way up to Alaska, which is pretty cool. Anyway, that can let you know how your reports are getting out into the field. Well, that's pretty much the Getting Started guide for the one-way SOTAmat HF commands. So your next step is to practice these at home before you go into the backcountry. You know, it is really easy to use once you learn how to use it, but like everything else in amateur radio, this isn't consumer stuff, right? It's a little more complicated than that, and it's fun to learn it. So get out there and practice at home before you go to the mountains. Now, the second thing is that this Getting Started video is really just about half of what SOTAmat does. The one-way commands, where you're sending messages over HF using FT8 or PSK31, or really any mode that will get your call sign and suffix into the PSK reporter network. But there's the other half of what SOTAmat does, which are the two-way commands. And the two-way commands are useful when you do have cellular service or internet access, or when you have a satellite communicator device like a Garmin inReach. When you have connectivity, SOTAmat can do a whole bunch of other functions for you, like weather reports or call sign info and so on. So see my other video on two-way commands for SOTAmat. Have fun. 73.